All right, now we're at 3.06. How you guys perform on this is really more based on your algebra skills. I know we're talking about geometry, but your algebra skills are where it's at with this, okay? Now, if you have some poor algebra skills, it's going to be a bit of a challenge because you like to use numbers, and this is all going to be using algebra, but with variables, with all the letters, right? So, but I'll talk you through it. I'll try my best to help you out. We've done this before in class. We do it all the time, really, but it's something that I've noticed people tend to struggle a lot with. So get a piece of paper out. You want to make sure you're writing this stuff out by hand as well. You don't just want to just watch the video. Okay, but here we're going to be rearranging formulas. So the first formula we're going to look at is a very simple one. Distance equals rate times time. Okay, d equals r times t. Okay, let's look at our, let's go to the second page. Let's take a look at this. So let's say, for example, you are asked to solve for r. Let's say that you know what the distance is already, and you know what the time is already. So all you need to do is find the rate, find the speed, right? Okay, so what we'd want to do is we'd want to isolate the equation for r. Rather than having it d equals, we want to say r equals, right? So we go through the process of rearranging the formula. So here's what we would do. And you've got this video already here to work it out, but just to kind of keep it all in one video. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to go to this. Okay, so you have the formula d equals r times t. Okay. Now, just to compare it to something we know, let's use numbers because a lot of times you guys freak out with the variables here. But let me use numbers. Let's just pretend, for example, we had the equation that was 10 equals 5 times 2. So let 10 kind of represent d, let 5 represent the r, and 2 represent the t, just for the sake of working it out. Now, if I wanted to solve for, let's say, 5 here, right, and I didn't want 10 equals or d equals, I wanted it to be like 5 equals whatever, I'd have to find a way of canceling out the times 2. Now, since it's multiplying by 2, the only way to cancel it out would be to divide by 2. So if I divide that side by 2, then that 2 cancels out, right? But I can't just divide one side. I have to do the same thing to both sides. So what would happen is on the right side, the 2's would cancel, and I'd be left with 5, all by itself. And on the other side, I end up with 10 divided by 2. Now this works out, right? 10 divided by 2 is in fact 5, so that's how we know that we've done it right. Okay? So we have the same thing, just with letters instead of numbers. What difference does it make, right? I want to solve for r. Well, in order to solve for r, in order to get r by itself, I have to find a way to cancel out the t. Now, since I'm multiplying that t to r, the only way to undo that multiplication is division, right? Division is opposite of multiplication, just like the 2, right? Okay, so we would divide this side by t. So when we look at this, we see t divided by t, which just like the 2's cancel out, right? But of course, remember, you have to do this to both sides. So we're going to divide by t on the other side as well. So what that leaves us is, since the t's cancel, we just have r all by itself, r equals, and on the other side, we end up with d divided by t. Now in this case, we can't actually simplify it. Like 10 over 2, we understand that that's 5, but I left it as 10 over 2. We can't actually simplify this because they're not like terms. And there's no way to divide d by t unless we plug in numbers, right? If I plug in numbers for d and t, then I can actually do some division. But ultimately, this is what we're asked to do in this section. It's just rearrange the formula. It still has the exact same variables. It still has d, r, and t in it. It's just rearranged in a different way so that the r is by itself rather than d, right? So that's the objective. So all we're going to do is use our algebra skills to undo certain things in order to isolate a particular variable. Let's look at our third page. So, for example, let's look at the area of a triangle formula. So the area of a triangle is A equals 1/2 BH. Now what that stands for is the area is equal to 1/2 base times height. So area is equal to 1/2 times base times height. So all three of these things are being multiplied together. It's 1/2 times the base times the height. So it doesn't really matter the order that you'd multiply them. You could have 1/2 times height times base or anything. It could be in any order. So let's say, oops, I didn't mean to click on it again. Right, let's say that, well, let's use this example here, right? Top 3 would like you to create a logo that fits within a triangle that has an area of 2. So it's giving us area. It's telling us area is 2. So we have that information to plug in. The size logo fits nicely on shirt pockets and hats. Top 3 would like to know what height, H. So what height? It's asking for the height. So height is what we're asked to solve for. Given that we have certain base lengths of 1 inch, 2 inch, and 4 inch. So it gives us the base lengths. So it wants us to solve for height. So rather than having A equals for area equals, we want an equation that says H equals. So that means taking what's in this equation and rearranging it so that H can be by itself. So here's how we do that. Let me erase, put it back. Okay. So our goal, since we need the H by itself, we have to try and cancel out the B and cancel out the 1/2. That's our objective. All right, now, since everything's being multiplied together, there isn't really a priority in terms of what needs to go first. But a lot of times I think we look at the fraction. So another way of writing our formula, since all three of these are being multiplied together, is you could simply view this as 1 times b times h over 2. This is still the same as 1/2 times base times height. Since everything's multiplied together, it doesn't matter the order it's written. Basically, the base and the height and the 1 are all being multiplied, and the 2 on bottom means dividing by 2. So you could take the base times the height and divide it by 2. Now, if you don't believe me, think about a particular example. Let's say that 10 was equal to 1/2 times 4 times 5, just to show you how this works, right? I'm claiming that this is the same thing as 1 times 4 times 5, all divided by 2, right? And this is indeed true. You can do 1/2 times 4 times 5. That ultimately equals 10, because half of 4 would be 2, and 2 times 5 would equal 10. But you could also do it like this, where you do 1 times 4 times 5, which would be 20, and then divide it by 2, and you would still end up with 10. So it's okay for me to arrange it like this. Now, the reason I arrange it like that is because I want to show you how I cancel out the 2. The opposite of dividing by a 2 is to multiply by a 2. So if I take this side and I multiply it by a 2, all I'm doing is canceling out 2. So what that will leave me, also don't forget, since I multiplied this side by 2, I have to multiply it over here as well. So I'll have 2a, and what that leaves me on the right side would be the 1 times b times h. Now, since 1 times anything is itself, I won't really need that 1 there, right? To give you to kind of view it in the numbers perspective, if I said I multiplied this whole thing by 2, right, and I'm canceling out 2, what I'm saying is that, by multiplying 2 on the other side as well, I'm saying 20 is equal to 1 times 4 times 5, right? Just simply getting rid of the 2 here and leaving the 1, the 4, and the 5. And that's true. 20 is equal to 1 times 4 times 5, right? And of course, 1 times 4 times 5 is the same as 4 times 5. So that's exactly a numerical example of what I'm doing. Now, I would still have to cancel out the b, right? I've gotten rid of this 2 as part of the 1/2. So essentially, I've gotten rid of the 1/2. Now I just have to get rid of the b in order to have this h all by itself, right? I'm looking at this formula here. I've got 2a equals b times h. So since this b is getting multiplied to h, the only way to cancel the b out is to divide, because the opposite of multiplying by b is dividing by b. So I would divide by that, and I would cancel out the b. Of course, don't forget you have to do that to the other side as well. So I cancel out the b by dividing, so I'm going to divide by b on the left side as well. Now, since the b cancels out, the h is all by itself, which is the objective of our problem, and I end up with this on the other side. I have the 2 times the a that I got, and then divided by the b. So this is my new formula, all rearranged where I have the h by itself. I still have everything. I still have the 1/2, so to speak. The 1/2 is turned into a 2. I still have the a, the b, and the h. So everything is still there. I didn't add anything. I didn't get rid of anything. All the parts are still there. It's just h is by itself. It's h equals rather than a equals. And so now the company wants us to test out bases where they already told us the area was 2 inches squared. It wants to test out bases that are 1 inch, 2 inches, and 4 inches. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. So let me turn that off. I don't even know if it's going to work. Base is of 1 inch, 2 inches, and 4 inches, right? 1 inch, 2 inch, and 4 inches. So we're going to try that for each of these. So if B is 1 inch, let's use our formula, right? H is equal to 2 times A over B. That's our new formula, remember? So remember, area is 2, so I'll plug in 2 for the area. So that'll be a 2 times 2 at the top. And then I'm using B as 1 in this case, so plug in 1 for B. So that'll leave me 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 divided by 1 equals 4. So height is equal to 4. So a base of 1, base equals 1, height would equal 4. Let's test it out for a base of 2 inches. Base equals 2. So same formula, H equals 2A over B. Again, area is still 2 inches as claimed in the problem, but now we're using the base of 2 inches. So we're going to plug in 2 for B this time rather than plugging in 1. So that gives us 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So if I have a base of 2 inches, I'll have a height of 2 inches as well. Base is 2 inches, height was 2 inches. And let's try the last one of 4, right? Let's plug that one in. So the base of 4. So let's use our formula. H equals 2 times A divided by B. Remember, A is still 2. That's not changed. But B in this case, we're going to test out 4 inches for our base. So plug in 4. So 2 times 2 is 4 over 4. 4 divided by 4 is going to be 1. So if I have a base of 4 inches, I'll have a height of 1. So there are our 3 results. And then you would see kind of a simple illustration of what they might look like. You know, the one on the left in yellow has a base of maybe 1 inch and a height of 4, since its base is short and its height is tall. The one in the middle maybe has a base of 4 inches and a height of 1, given the fact that the base is really long and the height is very short. And then the blue one on the right is probably the one that's balanced. The base is probably 2 inches and the height of the triangle is also probably about 2 inches. I don't understand about the whole question about which executives like the most. I don't see how that's relevant. That wasn't asked in the question as far as I can see. So don't worry about that, I guess. The important thing is rearranging the equation. All right, these are only going to get harder, so I apologize for that. So there's a video of some practice again, so you can always watch that to kind of see it. This is a very good video. Check it out for some more examples if you're still stuck after this video. But let's try this example, right? So suppose you know the area. So let's write down. This is the formula of a trapezoid. Okay, so A equals 1/2 B1 plus B2 and then times H. So let's write that formula down. So A equals 1/2 B1 plus B2 times H. So it's kind of like the 1/2 base times height, except there are 2 bases here. Base 1 and base 2. Okay, so it's telling, suppose you know the area. Okay, so suppose you know the area. So we would know this information. And suppose that you know the length of the 2 bases. So we know the length of both bases, this one and this one. It's asking you need to find the height. Okay, so it wants us to solve for H, which means we have to somehow get rid of all this stuff, right? So that the H can be by itself, and it can be H equals all that other stuff, right? So I have to somehow move all of that junk to the other side. All right. So we'll get rid of the 1/2 the same way we got rid of it before. The opposite of a dividing by 2 that I see here, because it's 1 divided by 2 is the same thing as 1/2. The opposite of dividing by 2, and since all three groups. Yes, there's a plus sign here, but that plus sign is inside parentheses. So essentially there are three groups, the 1/2, the parentheses, and the h. They're all being multiplied together. So we can get rid of the dividing by 2 by multiplying this whole side by 2. Now, that doesn't really do anything, remember. That doesn't really double everything. All it does is it lets this 2 cancel out the original 2. Everything else remains kind of untouched. It just allows the 2's to cancel. So we're multiplying both sides by 2. So that's going to leave us 2a. And now, since the 2 is going to be canceled, the 1 is going to be kind of pointless, so I won't worry about writing it. I mean, I'll write it for now, but I'll erase it. The 1 would still be there, right? Then we would have base 1 plus base 2 times h. Okay, so again, the 1's kind of useless because 1 times anything would still be the same thing. So essentially, I've gotten rid of the 1/2. I've gotten rid of that dividing by 2. And now I have just the b1 plus b2 and the h. So remember, I'm trying to get this h all by itself. Now, the good thing here is the base 1 and base 2 are grouped together in parentheses. And why that's a good thing is we don't have to treat them separately. We can treat them together. We need this entire group to go away. Now, since that entire group is getting multiplied to h, the way we can cancel it out, do the opposite, is divide by that group. Because the opposite of multiplying by this parenthesis thing is to divide by that parenthesis thing. So we'll divide by b1 plus b2. That has the whole thing, as it's grouped together, cancel out. Of course, if you do it to this side, you have to do it to the other side as well. So we're going to divide this side by the b1 plus b2. And look at that. The whole group's going to cancel out on the right and leave just the h, which is exactly what we wanted. And we end up having this on the other side as a formula, 2a over b1 plus b2. So there you go. Perfect. Now you can plug in all the values for the area in the base 1 and the base 2, and you can calculate the height much easier. Very easily, but much easier. You can see they've done all the work. Same thing I've done. Hopefully it makes sense. They still get the same answer. Let's try isolating this one. So this one says solve for y. Now, when it says solve for y, it doesn't mean get y equals a number. It just means get the y by itself and move all the other letters around. So we have the formula is ax minus by is greater than c. So it's ax minus b, it's capital B, let's use capital B. by is greater than, less than, what was it? Greater than c. Okay, let me make that a little bit better. Greater than c. All right, so it wants us to solve for y, which means isolate the y. Now, the inequality sign is going to act as our equal sign here, so it's going to act as our barrier. So we don't want the c to be by itself as it's left here. We want this y to be by itself. Now, for that y to be by itself, we're going to have to find a way to get rid of all this other stuff. So here's how we're going to do that. Now, the first thing is this term is completely separate from the y. So I want to get rid of that term completely. Ax is a term. It's one term. It's a and the x are grouped together since they're multiplied together. I want to get rid of that. Now, don't think about this minus sign as a minus sign. It really means a negative b, so don't focus on that. This term that we're getting rid of is a positive term, right? Ax is positive. So in order for us to cancel it out, we will have to subtract by ax, right? So we're going to do this on both sides. Now, again, let's look at what's happening here. Here we have ax minus ax. Well, guess what? That's 0. Ax minus ax is 0 and cancels out. So we're going to be left with just a negative by. We still have greater than sign, but on this side, look what we have. We have c minus ax. We can't combine them together because they're separate terms. So c is one term, that minus ax is a separate term, so there's just two separate terms. Okay, so the last thing, remember, we're trying to get y by itself. So the last thing to get rid of is the negative b. Now, a lot of you might think, oh, it's negative, so let's add b to both sides. But that's not quite it. Because the thing is, the b is actually being multiplied with y, right? It's negative b times y. Think of it like this, for example. Think of it as a number. Think of it like it was negative 4 times y, right? If it was negative 4y greater than all that other stuff, right? If you add 4, you can't really, that wouldn't work because because this is a term, adding 4 is not a like term. Therefore, you're saying you can combine things that are not like terms. And that's why you can't add there, because you're not adding. If you wanted to add 4y, that'd be perfect because they're like terms and you can cancel them out. The only issue is then you're canceling out the y as well, and you're just making 0 here. You're not really leaving yourself y. So adding is the wrong way to go about this. What we have to do is divide. If it was a negative 4y, you would divide by negative 4, and here's the reason why. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 becomes 1, not 0. These cancel out, but they cancel out, become the number 1, 1y, which is what we want. We want y. We want 1y. We don't want 0y. We don't want it all to cancel out. We just want it to be 1. So if I divide by negative b divided by negative b becomes a 1y. The y is left there, of course, right? So I have to divide everything else. I have to divide the other side by negative b, because if I divide this side by negative b, I have to divide that side by negative b. And so what that leaves us is 1y, which is the same as just regular y. Since we're dividing by a negative, this is kind of a trick. This is sort of a something that's going to cause you mistakes. Since you're dividing by a negative, you do have to flip your inequality sign backwards. We've talked about that before. So we do have the sign since we divide by a negative, but still we would be left with c minus ax divided by negative b as our result. So solving for y means this. It means getting the y by itself, isolating the y by itself. So it's really a short process because this isn't too much, but it can be rather confusing given the fact that it's only letters, right? If you think about it in terms of numbers, let me show you the same problem, but if it had numbers instead. Let's say it was, 2x minus, let's use 4y since we had that earlier, minus 4y greater than 12, right? If it was numbers, you guys know how to do that. You would subtract 2x, right? That's the same as subtracting ax, right? You'd end up with negative 4y greater than negative 2x. Well, let's write it the way we wrote it. 12 minus 2x. Same thing, right? 12, 2x. They're not like terms, so we keep them separate, right? That's no different than what we've written in this step. And then you would say, okay, we need to divide by negative 4. So we'll divide by negative 4, right? And that's exactly what we did. We know that we would have to flip the sign, right? And we'd end up with, we would simplify this, but you can just leave it like this for now, right? It's the same thing. You guys have been doing this forever, but you've been doing it with numbers for so long. It's the exact same process as the numbers. It's just letters instead. So don't view it as numbers and letters. Just view it as like some random little symbol, okay? A 2, an A, it all's the same thing. Algebra is still the same thing. The steps are all still the same, whether it's a number or a letter. So don't let that confuse you. Don't let that bother you, okay? Just do the same steps. Same algebra, regardless if it's a number or a letter. So you can see this is worked out, and they get that answer that we came up with. All right. Here we're going to convert the Celsius to Fahrenheit formula. So here we have the Celsius formula, which is C equals 5/9 times F minus 32. So let's write this formula down. C equals 5/9 times F minus 32. This is our formula, right? So it goes through this problem. It tells you that this guy knows that it's in, he's in Paris and they go by Celsius. He knows it's 6 degrees Celsius. So he wants to figure out, I'll just put C, right? 6 degrees Celsius. He wants to know, what is this in Fahrenheit? Okay, so we're going to rearrange the formula and then we'll plug the 6 in, right? So to rearrange this, we want to solve for F. We want to get F by itself. So the first thing is, notice that F is in the parentheses here. So don't worry about that stuff yet. Save the parentheses for last. We want to get rid of the 5/9 because the 5/9 is on the same side as f, but it's not in the parentheses. So let's get rid of that first. Now the 5/9 we can get rid of the same way we got rid of the 1/2, but let's do it in 2 steps. The 9 on the bottom, think of it as dividing by 9. Okay, well, what's the opposite of dividing by 9? The opposite of dividing by 9 is multiplying by 9. So if we multiply this whole side by 9, it doesn't really do much. It just cancels out that 9 at the bottom. Okay, so you'll still have the 5 be a 5. You'll still have f minus 32 be f minus 32. It's just the 9 that we've decided to multiply here is going to cancel out this. The only catch is you have to multiply the other side by 9 as well. So you're multiplying the other side by 9, you get 9c. All right, so now we have this. Now we have the 5 to get rid of. Now the 5 is being multiplied, right? It's 5 times the parentheses. So since the f is in parentheses, we want to leave this alone. We want to try and cancel out the 5. Now since the 5 is getting multiplied to the parentheses, a good way of getting rid of it would just be dividing by 5. So if we divide that side by 5, the f and the 32 won't get affected because they're in parentheses. But the 5 that we divide by will cancel out the 5 in the equation. So we'll do that. But of course, if we do it to the right side, we're going to have to do it to the left side as well. So divide by 5. So that's still going to leave you the f minus 32. But now, since f minus 32 is alone and there's nothing else, we don't have to use the parentheses on it anymore because there's no point in writing the parentheses if they're the only things that are left. Okay, so of course we still have 9c over 5. So the last thing to do to get f by itself is pretty simple. We just have to get rid of the minus 32. So since it's subtracting 32, we add 32 and that will cancel it out. So, but just remember, you have to add the 32 to the other side as well. So you'll end up with f all by itself, and here you're going to have 9c divided by 5, and then add 32. So there's your formula. So if it's 6 degrees Celsius, just plug 6 in. So you'd have 9 times 6 divided by 5, plus 32. This will equal f. So just calculate this all out. 9 times 6 is 54. So 54 divided by 5 plus 32. Let's see, 54 divided by 5 is about 11. So we'll just round and we'll just say it's really like 10.8, but let's just say it's 11 just for the sake of rounding. So 11 plus 32 equals f, and 11 plus 32 is 43. So it's about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that's a rounded number, but it would be about that. And you can see that's what they've done when they worked it out here. They do all the steps, they kind of write it all out rather than working it out like I did, but they get the same thing, right? So let's try this example, right? A rectangular bedroom has a length of 14 feet and an area is 126 feet squared. What's the width? So we're looking at the area formula. Now we know the area formula, area is equal to length times width. So I know the area, and I know which one, the length or the width. I know the length is 14. So I know the area, and I know the length. So it's asking what's the width. So if I want to solve for the width, right, to get width equals, to get width by itself, I'll have to cancel out the length. So since the length is getting multiplied to the width in the formula, the way I can cancel out L would be to divide by L, since multiplying by L can be undone by dividing by L. So we'll do that to the other side. So the L's here are going to cancel, so that leaves the W all by itself. And here it's just simply area divided by L. So you've rearranged it, that's it. The W is by itself, there wasn't a whole lot of work. It's just width is equal to area divided by L. Since we know area is 126, and we know length is 14, we can just plug it in. So it's really just 126 divided by 14. That equals the width. I don't have a calculator, but they say it's 9 feet when you calculate it out. So there are your formulas. Let's try maybe a couple of these real quick. You can either end the video if you get the idea, or if you want to go through these practice problems together, you can keep watching. Let's go through this one at least. So we want to solve for r here. Okay, so we have c equals 2 pi r. c equals 2 pi r, and we want to solve for r. Okay, now 2 times pi times r, all of that is multiplied together. So in order to get the r by itself, I'll have to get rid of the 2 and the pi. So if you did one thing at a time, most times we can do both of these at the same time, but here we'll do one thing at a time. The opposite of multiplying by 2 to that side would be dividing by 2. So opposite of multiplying by 2 will divide by 2. So we can multiply, or divide by 2 rather. So divide by 2. But at the same time, the opposite of multiplying by pi would be dividing by pi. So if I divide by 2 and divide by pi, then I'm canceling out not only the 2, but the pi as well. So I'll divide by pi as well. So dividing by 2 pi cancels out this 2 pi and leaves r completely by itself. And what do we have on this side? We have c divided by 2 pi. So that would be this last option there, right? So I'm going to let you guys, this will check your answer. This is not a graded thing, but it'll check your answer for you. You can try those few problems as well. Let me see what's on this last page. So this last page, a car travels a total distance of 300 miles while going an average of 50 miles per hour. How long did the car travel? So remember, distance equals rate times time. So distance equals r times t. So we're asked, how long did the car travel? So it's asking for time. So in order to find time, we can cancel out r. Since it's times r, we'll divide by r to cancel it out. So we'll divide by r. So time is going to be equal to distance divided by r. So the distance was 300 miles, as we know, and the rate, was 50 miles per hour. So t is equal to 300 divided by 50, which is 6. So it would have been 6 hours. Choice B. Okay. So that's how this works. It gives you the formula. Volume equals length times width times height. It gives you the volume itself. It gives you the height. It gives you the length. Asks you to find the width. I'll let you guys handle the rest of these. Let's maybe do the last one actually, since it looks a little complicated. So rectangle perimeter is 2w plus 2l. So perimeter is equal to 2w plus 2l. So we are asked here, we know the perimeter is 108, we know the width is 22, and wants us to find the length. So we want to find L. So we're going to solve for L. So that means getting rid of everything else. So first thing is 2w has nothing to do with the L term, so let's cancel that out. So since we want it to go away completely, we'll subtract 2w, because 2w minus 2w will make it 0, so it won't exist on that side anymore. So we'll subtract 2w to both sides. So obviously the 2w will cancel on the right and just leave you with 2l. And on the left, we just have p minus 2w, so p minus 2w. Now to solve for L, I have to get rid of the 2. Since the 2 here is multiplied with L, I'll divide by 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And now that leaves us our answer. Our answer is L is equal to, this, p minus 2w divided by 2. So since the problem already gave me the perimeter was 108, so p was 108. It also told me the width was 22. Let me just double check those numbers. Yeah, 108 perimeter, 22 feet was the width. Let's just plug it in. So we plug in the 108 for P, and we plug in the 22 for W. We can calculate our length. So let's work that out. So let's do the multiplication first. 2 times 22 is 44. So we have 108 minus 44 over 2. So if I subtract 108 minus 44 is 56 plus 8, 64. And then, of course, divide by 2. 64 divided by 2 is 32. So the length must be 32 feet. Choice A. And there you go. Right? It's all done for you. The quiz can be a challenge, so please make sure you're using some paper. Make sure you're working some stuff out. Keep in mind, the questions on the quiz, if you take one attempt to another, the numbers in the problems do change. So don't just think, oh, the answer was 5 on the first one, so I'll guess 5 the next time. That's not, or don't do that, because the numbers in the problem will be different. So please make sure you're working this out and not just taking guesses, because I promise you, the problem, the questions are going to change, and the answers might be the same, but you have to remember that's not going to be the same test you take. For attempt 1 won't be the same as the attempt 2. Those quizzes will be different. So, like I said, just work it out. There's no taking shortcuts on this. Do the best you can. Good luck to you. All right, if you have questions, let us know. All right, see you guys later.